Okay. Hello, I'm Bob Matheny. I'm Mayor of Zebulon, and this is the Zebulon Mayor's Show. We're going to talk a little bit today about transportation, but first I did want to talk about one of our work sessions. We actually had two work sessions on the same day, one being a special meeting to talk about the UDO, and you're going to hear a lot more about UDO. UDO is Unified Development Ordinance. We're going to be working on that for some time to come now, and basically what that does is goes back through our development ordinances, cleans them up, might change the format, codifies them and makes them more understandable for developers. So as we move forward, it's a much easier thing to deal with and much more understandable to the people that utilize it. So there will be a lot more of that going on. We do have the Lawrence Group is our consultants on this, so we're working with people that specialize in this type of work. And I'll keep you informed as we move forward on that. But remember that term, UDO, Unified Development Ordinance. Now, following that meeting, we had another work session that evening, and it was on the transportation plan. And we've been working on transportation plan, updating our transportation plan for 6 or 7 months now, I guess. We formed a special committee that worked with our staff and also another consultant group. So I want to go through a PowerPoint presentation that I will be giving, and by the time you see this, we'll have given it to a couple of groups. If you happen to have a group that would like for me to come and talk to you about it, we welcome input on this plan. We want the citizens to take a look at it, understand it, and give us their impressions of it. So as a result of what I'm going to show you, if you do have comments, please feel free to call me. You can call the planning department or any of our commissioners and share your thoughts with it. But we last updated our transportation plan back in 2001. And so, you know, let's take a look at what we're proposing now. If you go to the first slide on there, or the second slide actually, it says Transportation Plan 2014. You'll note that the reasons that we're updating this plan is to provide a long-range evaluation of future traffic management and transportation investments. Well, what are we trying to do? We're trying to create roads that will cause traffic to move, not be congestive as we continue to grow, and it would also then be a component of our Code of Ordinances and our comprehensive plan, so they would all work hand in hand as we move forward and grow over the years to come. It is, again, a guide for the improvements of the town's road systems, sidewalks, bike lanes, greenways, and public transit. So it's a lot more than just the roads itself. And as I stated earlier, it was modified in 2001. Moving on to the next slide, we see that the reasons, and I've sort of covered some of those, but growth, which will and has put pressure on the town's transportation system. We're looking to avoid gridlock and congestion as we continue to grow. North of Rendell is under a lot of pressure right now, and we're hoping to improve that as we move forward. We want to establish those standards by which new growth and development pay their proportionate share. So what does that mean? That means that when you have a development and it puts increased traffic pressure on the roads, then they share in upgrading those roads to manage their impact. And then we also in the future have ETJ expansions, annexations, and this sort of thing that will increase transportation concerns. We don't have anything on the radar right now. I know people get jumpy when I say ETJ and annexation. There's nothing on the radar, so don't worry about that. But we do have to think ahead. So let's move on to some more reasons. The current plan is really just not development friendly. And let me give you some examples. Hempstead avoided doing a development of an office occupancy out on Highway 97 West, and it was a building that was already there, but because of all the improvements that were called for under the plan, it was just too great a cost for them to bear for the return that they would get. So by having that occupancy there, so they backed off of that. Coventry House, again out on 97, did not make some improvements just due to the financial constraints that they had because of the plan, the current plan, the one that we're trying to replace. So looking ahead again to the next slide, I mentioned that we had a consultant. CDM Smith was contracted as a consulting firm to work on the plan update. They provide us technical knowledge of transportation and planning, gathered and reviewed existing documents, performed travel demand modeling and mapping, and presented project needs and alternatives, and just helped develop the roadway information. Their expertise was really necessary just simply because we were unable to do that in-house. Looking at the next slide, we established a working study group, and it consisted of 2 commissioners, myself, and some staff people, and then of course the representative from CDM Smith. And what we did was we looked back at the 2001 plan. We removed some of those projects because 1, they just simply didn't fit anymore, or 2, maybe they had been accomplished, and a lot of them had been accomplished. So then we added projects that coincided with what I would call the hot spots for growth and development in the town. And then we also discussed and received input from the town attorneys on statutory authority to receive fees for our transportation impact. So we had to look at all of this to be sure that we were doing it the right way. Looking next, we give you some examples of some projects. We looked at Arundel Avenue from Pippin Road to Proctor Street, Arundel Avenue from Proctor Street to US 64, and that was to be consistent with the town's NC 96 engineering report, which was dated back in 2012. Gannon Avenue from Pineview to Rotary, and then we also looked at greenways. We have 2 potential greenways, one from the Tarrant Meadows subdivision, both of these Tarrant Meadows and connecting Tarrant Meadows and Weaver's Pond, and this is up in the northern part of town. And then longtime dream of mine is a greenway from Community Park south of town all the way to 5 County Stadium down at Highway 39. That's a little over 3 miles. We do have the right-of-way or the easement down through there because there is a sewer easement there, but there's also some other little problems we need to work out on that. But then also there's a big problem we're going to have some money to do it with. But anyway, greenways are a part of this plan. Looking at the map in general, this map can be very confusing to look at, and the only reason that I put it in this PowerPoint was to show to you the scope of what we took a look at. You can see all these different roads, and the little numbers on there indicate, they reference something at the bottom of the map. And when I present this plan to a group, live to a group, then I will have a large copy of this map that people can get up and take a look at. But let me give you some ideas of some things. The next slide shows Dogwood Drive to Riley Hill Road. And what we're doing is project, again, this is consistent with the NC 96 study, but it's showing what we project that to look like. There would be 4 lanes of traffic with a median, sidewalks, curb gutter, and that's the way we would see that section to be developed, and it's what we're proposing. If you look at the next page, you have East Gannon Avenue from Arundel to 264, and we project that to 2 14-foot lanes with curb and gutter, with a concrete median as opposed to the grassy median in the previous one, and has 5-foot sidewalks on both sides, and then also has lamp posts, the amenities, curb gutter, that sort of thing. So that's the way we have viewed that portion of Arundel. Looking at the next one, we're looking at West Gannon from Rotary Drive out to Pineview. That would be 2 12-foot lanes and then a 12-foot center turn lane paved shoulders on both sides of the roadway for bicycle lanes, and then you would have sidewalks on both sides as well. So this is what we, view that we would like to see that section of the road look like. Looking at the next one, slide gives you an idea of what we would project greenways to be. They might be this nice, they might not, but nonetheless, they would be used for walking, bicycling, and other passive type recreation. Looking at the next one, we look at some of the considerations of what we're trying to do. And currently, when a developer comes in and builds, such as, let's take Bojangles as an example, we use bonds to secure money for future roadway improvements. And there are various reasons that these people don't like bonds, and I certainly understand that. One, they have to renew them and pay a premium for them every year. And then there's also no end date or deadline for the installation of the improvements. We have the authority under a House Bill 802 that was given to us some years ago to charge transportation impact fees, but we've not been doing that. Looking ahead, we do plan to go with transportation impact fees, and what this fees are allowed for is road drainage, construction projects in town, and extraterritorial jurisdiction. The fees must be based on reasonable classifications and rates, so we can't just go out there and pick a number out of the blue. And it also is based on the number of daily trips. So what am I saying there? The impact that development has on that road. There is the Institute of Transportation Engineers has codings for various occupancies that tell you what the projected impact would be, and we'll look at that in just a little bit. If DOT were to require a certain improvements immediately, and they had to go ahead and do that, then they would get a dollar for dollar credit back against the fees that we would be developing, so they don't, get double hit, for example. But let's talk a little bit about House Bill 802. It can be used for road or drain projects fees, and you collect the money, and currently it states under our authority, the authority given to us by the legislature, that we can spend up to 50% of the money that we collect on any one project. So if we collect $100, we can only spend 50 of it on a specific project. This is true for other things as too, like other fees that we have authority for as well. Also then it says that what we have to do is spend that money within 6 years of the date of collection, or 10 years if we're doing it in conjunction with another governmental unit. We're in the process of asking the state legislature to modify this to allow us to spend 100% of the money on any one project and to have to spend it within 10 years irregardless. And so we're asking for a modification to the local bill for that. And hopefully that will happen in the upcoming short session of the state legislature. Looking at the formula overview, this can get sort of complicated, but again, if you have any questions, you might want to get in touch with me. But what we did was we determined a list of the projects where the fees would be used. So these are our priority projects. We calculated in those projects the difference in the current trips and the future trips. And then we create a cost per trip based on the peak hour of traffic. And then we applied a discount to that fee to keep it competitive with other communities. And then we used the Institute of Transportation Engineers trip generation study to apply average trip increase for development based on the land use and or the size of the development. So let's take a look at that. We picked these items as our priority items that we use to develop the fees. North of Rendell, widening and roadway improvements, that was the big boy. It was $11 million. Traffic signal improvement at Judd and Arundel, $175,000, and reading on down, downtown, $500,000, Yates Place, which we have a real problem with some drainage improvements out there at $350,000, and then $500,000 each for East Judd Street improvements. That's East Judd between North Arundel and Shepherd School Road. If you've been down that lately, it's a roller coaster. And then general sidewalk improvements, $500,000, and Gannon widening, the design work of that only, $270,000. So we came up with $13,297,500. So we take the current peak hour trips and deduct that from the estimated peak hour trips for 2025, and that comes up to 21,084 trips during peak hour that we would increase. So we take that 13 million that came from the previous page and divide it by 21,084, which is the number of trips, and we come up with $631 per trip. So looking at the next one then, we applied this 50%, what we'll call a competitive discount, in order to keep us, competitive with other communities and what they charge. So that developed a fee of $316. So it's $316 per peak hour trip. Okay, moving down from there, we look at the ITE, or the engineer's trip generation study, and you can see that manufacturing has an ITE code, and the unit of measure is 1,000 square feet. Medical office is ITE code 720. Unit of measure again is square footage. A school has a different code, and it's on a per student basis. So everything is appropriate to the type of occupancy. Well, what I'm going to do is give you an example of the fee that we would develop for a restaurant or a fast food with a drive-through. So that has an ITE code of 934, and it's based on the square footage of the restaurant. So the trip generation for that, figuring per 1,000 square feet, is 46.14. So we take that and move on to the next page, and we say, okay, the size of this restaurant is 3,900 square feet. So you take that, divide by 1,000, you come up with 3.9. You take 3.9 times the trip generation rate of 46.14, and that comes up to the average daily trips of 179.95. You take that and multiply it times the fee per peak hour, which, as you saw earlier, was developed with $316. So the transportation impact fee for that restaurant would be $56,864.20. Now, that's a lot of money, I realize that, but it's a lot of impact, and if they don't pay it, you as the taxpayer are going to pay it. So these fees, we feel, are very appropriate. As you recall earlier, though, I mentioned that dollar for dollar credit would be given for work that they were required to do by DOT. Well, let's look at Bojangles. Bojangles would not have had to pay any more money than this because it was that much money that they had to spend to start with. So, a lot of this may already have been spent as a result of what DOT would require. So, let's look at the next. This is just a recap of what I covered. It kind of puts it into, encapsulates it. You take your priority cost, you divide that by the increase in traffic impact. It equals your cost, gross cost per trip. You modify that by 50%. You come out with a net cost per trip of $316. Looking at the restaurant, you have a trip generation rate of 46.14. You take that times the square footage factor of 3.9, and you come up with average daily trips of 179.95. Multiply that times your 316 that was developed from up above, and you come up with $56,684. So again, that's just simply overview. It's putting it all on one page, and I hope maybe makes it a little bit easier to understand. Believe me, I understand it took a while to digest all of this as we were working through it. So I know it's not something that a lot of people will grasp immediately, but again, I'm always available to try to answer questions on it. Moving forward, where do we go from here? Well, we're going to have a joint public hearing. That will probably be the first meeting in April, or the first meeting along with the planning board in April, which will be the second Monday in April. That's the date we're shooting for. Before that time, I will be available to give this program and receive input from people for staff. So, you know, again, get in touch with me or call the town clerk or town manager, whatever. If you can't get up with me, I'll be more than happy to come and sit down and talk with you. We sincerely do want your input. We will have the joint public hearing with the planning board, and then the planning board would review this data plus any other input from citizens, and then review that and make recommendations back to the town board. That will probably happen sometime in the month of April, and so then we, the Board of Commissioners, should receive that recommendation by May, and we probably would be in a position to go ahead and adopt this updated transportation plan by then. Again, I know this is rather complicated matter. I want people to understand it. I want people to ask questions, and I encourage you to, if you have an opportunity to come to any of the meetings. I will be having one for the, along with the chamber and chamber members. I'll be inviting those to come to Town Hall. I'm tentatively shooting for March the 4th on that, but we'll put out some information on it. I encourage you to come, and then I encourage you just to come to the public hearing. We want your input. These are your streets, your roads, and what you want them to look like and how you want them to develop as we move forward. So I can't stress the importance of this. And I'll go back on the UDO that I mentioned at the beginning. That is extremely important as well, and we'll be soliciting more input. We've already been soliciting some from various groups, but we'll be soliciting more as we move forward. So, a lot going on. We've got some very important stuff. I hope you have found this information useful, and I hope you will not hesitate to contact us if you have any input or questions. Until next month, thank you. I'm Bob Matheny.